When I was a much younger man, I used to love fishing at night. The relaxation and tranquility were unmatched after a hard week at work. But I never went again after I saw the hell chimp and what it did to the bridge. Cool nights with a full moon usually make for a great time to catch panfish while they feed. So I put the boat on the back of the truck and headed to the riverbank. I was out on the river to do some nighttime fishing, and while I was there, I swore I thought I saw something swinging from beam to beam under the bridge. Usually I didn't drift down that far because of the sound of the vehicles on the bridge and the motor oil runoff in the water, but despite all that, I was managing to hook quite a few decent-sized crappies and even a respectable catfish. I was in the middle of unhooking the first catfish of the night when I heard low-pitched howling coming from under the bridge. Tossing the catfish in the live well, I gazed up to the bridge but didn't see anything. The underside and pillars of the bridge had warning lights that flashed on and off so the coal barges could measure the clearance during the evening hours. I tried to find the source of the howl, but the flash and dissipation of the lights kept me from being able to focus, so I decided to bait my hook and toss the line back in. I was about to get back to baiting my fishing pole when suddenly something moved in front of one of the lights as it flashed. All I could make out were long arms and stubby legs on a circular frame. It landed on one of the pillars near the left side of the bridge. As the light flashed on again and illuminated it once more, I could see it scurry from the concrete of the pillar and onto the support beam. I wiped my eyes with the ends of my fingers and tried to refocus my eyes to get a better look. But by the time I returned my vision to the support beam, there was nothing there. It was starting to seem like the combination of a long workday with the late fishing hours was messing with my perception a little bit when I heard an ear-splitting noise. It sounded similar to when someone drags an old metal desk across a concrete floor. The sound bore into my eardrums like a nail, and I covered them until the long squeal seemed to go away. My ears were ringing as I saw the huge piece of debris fly from behind the support pillar and fall into the river with a thunderous splash. The waves from the impact quickly made their way toward me and began to rock my boat from side to side. This thing was trying to take the bridge down. The lights returned. Once more, the fat, chimpanzee-like creature was swinging from beam to beam and landed on another concrete support pillar. It scurried up the support beam embedded in the concrete and disappeared around the backside. The wailing metallic sound erupted again, followed by another huge chunk of material splashing in the river. Waves around the boat intensified. There was a ringing in both of my ears as the creature emerged from the darkness again, swinging from the beam and leaping at the next to last support pillar. The light cut off once more, but I could hear the thing scrambling up the concrete in the darkness. Flecks of concrete fell into the water below, as if they were digging into it. Two more low-pitched howls sounded out of the shadows. "Hey!" I screamed at the thing under the bridge. "Hey!" I don't know what good I thought it would do, but I was hoping the damn thing would hear me and take its attention away from what it was doing to the bridge. Two more howls sounded in response, so I screamed again. Another deafening squeal of shredding metal erupted. The light flashed back on just in time for me to see the pickup truck-sized chunk of twisted support beam sailing through the air in the direction of me and my boat. The projectile landed 5 feet from me in the water, and the wave it caused nearly capsized the boat. My duffel bag, tackle box, and cooler all slipped off the side and into the water. The end of the boat I was sitting on dipped down into the river and started taking on water rapidly. I scrambled to the other side of the boat to try counterbalancing it, and it settled enough to keep from taking on any more water. I heard the fourth roar of twisting metal just as the boat was starting to stabilize. The debris splashed down into the river below the bridge this time, the hell chimp seeming to have forgotten about me. The lights flashed back on, and there was no terrifying creature to be seen. They flashed back off, back on again, and still nothing. I stared into the periodic bursts of illumination, but still, nothing emerged. It seemed like the whole ordeal may be over when a rumbling sound began emitting from the bridge. Chunks of metal and concrete began to tumble from the underside into the flowing water below. I looked in horror as the headlights of cars dipped downward and plummeted to meet the water and piling debris. Most of them fell directly into the river, but a few landed on crumbled pads of fallen roadway with a sickening crunch. Two of the pillars toppled onto the pile of rubble in the water. The impact of the pillars crushed one of the vehicles and engaged the car horn in a permanent wail that filled up the darkness. Floating in the water around my feet, I found my flashlight. I knew the odds were poor, but I fired up the boat engine and headed towards the collapsed bridge to see if anyone in the water was still alive. As I drew near, I aimed my flashlight at the half-submerged cars and pile of bridge debris. "Is anyone alive?" I shouted. No response. I pushed the boat a bit further toward the wreckage and called out again. "Anyone? Is anyone alive?" Silence. All I could hear was the lapping of water against the debris and the occasional splash from a falling chunk of concrete. I could see headlights below the water blinking and fade away into the inky darkness of the river. Turning back to the motor, I started turning the boat around when suddenly I heard the shuffling and shifting of stones. "Hello!" I yelled again. "Can you hear me?" Low-pitched howling filled the night air. The howl began to change into what sounded like guttural laughing. I spun back around and aimed my flashlight at the night. For just a moment, the beam caught the beast. The thing was covered in matted black hair. I could see now, but a gaping maw filled with row after row of teeth sat directly in the thing's perfectly round chest. Both arms were wiry and long, tipped with ashen white talons. It sat perched upon its knuckles and stubby legs atop a slab of concrete. It bellowed at me as it sprang into the air and dove into the water in front of my boat. I scrambled around the boat trying to find the 9mm handgun that I usually kept in my duffel bag, but it appeared it had slipped into the water with the rest of my gear. My head darted from side to side, looking at the rippling water for any sign of that hellish beast. There was no motion that I could detect. After a moment of frantic searching, I leaned back to use the motor to guide the boat back to shore when there was scraping on the bottom of the boat. 8 ash-colored talons tore through the thin hull of my vessel, and water spouted from the puncture marks. I grabbed my life vest and stood up in the boat as it began to drift. As the boat disappeared beneath the chilly water, I kicked and panicked frantically toward the shore. My mind raced with the fact that the monstrosity was in the water somewhere below my feet, which only made me kick hard. After a few minutes of swimming, I dragged myself onto the muddy bank and panted. I could already hear the distant wails of emergency vehicle sirens. When I regained some energy, I sat up and saw that I was on the opposite side of the river from my truck. It didn't matter much anyway, considering I was miles downstream. I stood up and tossed off the life jacket and looked across the river. One solitary warning light on the bridge still flickered on and off. There on the other shore was that damn thing, the hell chimp. Its body was turned in my direction and it just sat, perched on its knuckles. The light was reflecting off of its damp fur. It raised its arm and turned its talons in and out, as though it were waving to me. 2 more bellowing howls and the thing turned and ran over the hill into the night. A police officer found me waiting by the road at the entrance to the crumbled bridge. He assumed my car had gone over the edge when it collapsed. I stumbled and stuttered with my words as I tried to explain to him that I had been fishing when I saw something on the bridge, how it had caused the accident, and how it vanished into the night. I was taken to the hospital to be examined and almost everything checked out fine. There were some scratches and bruises, but otherwise, physically, I was fine. The medical staff asked me what had happened. After trying to explain to the police officer what I had seen and his puzzled look, I decided not to repeat the tale. No one would believe me anyway. Without the age of the internet at hand, the story was relegated to one article in a local paper. The evening news out of a nearby city had a 30-second segment on it. Folks around town still mention it as well. Thanks to the police officer that found me on the side of the road sharing my incoherent tale, the folks around town include me in the story too. I'm just the crazy old man in town who drinks too much and tells wild tales. You only have to tell an unlikely story once to get a reputation. Why am I putting this out there again for everyone to ridicule and mock me for? I saw an article online yesterday about a bridge collapsing upriver from the one I witnessed. The beams were torn up in a way that didn't make sense to investigators. Some of the bodies from the cars that went into the water were never recovered. A few that looked like they had been chewed on by a damn bear. At my age, I'll be dead in a decade anyway. With my drinking, you can probably cut that estimate in half. I may as well make it known. The whole damn town thinks I'm crazy anyway. May as well toss some gas on the fire. Anyway, I don't go night fishing anymore. Don't go fishing at all. Try not to drive over bridges either when I'm sober enough to drive. That hell chimp is still out there somewhere. Maybe more than one for all I know. It's probably just waiting for some poor guy doing a little night fishing to watch it do its evil work. It won't be me, though. I'm just going to stay home and have another drink. You probably should too.